Hey guys, today I want to talk about gear in Splatoon 2 for various things from first part basics of what the gear does, next part will be how to create builds and such, and the final part will probably be the most interesting is how much does gear matter? Because most people don't really talk about how much gear matters in Splatoon, or I say people talk about it, and they don't have too well of a formulated opinion. They're not considering many things when they talk about it. So the first part, like I said, we are going to just go over these abilities. You can read these on your own. I'm mainly going over the ones that have some significant change from the first game. The first one is run speed up. If you're used to this from the first game, you should test it out because it is not as strong as it is in the second game. The next one is special power up. At first this seems pretty good, but test out yourself because the amount that it does improve the effectiveness of a certain special weapon is marginal. At times, it marginally does it for splashdown. It only affects the duration of an ink cloud. It makes your reticle for missiles a bit larger and stuff like that. So really try that out before you decide to use that. Quick respawn, don't wear it like in the first game because it's different. Read the text, wonderful. Quick super jump, sub power up is mostly bomb range up, except for Ink Mine has a big explosion. Beacons make your teammates jump to the beacon quicker, and Wall has more health. Ink resistance up, you want to search, you just want to like try that out, honestly. 2 mains is usually pretty good. Bomb defense up, usually having this in your kit is fairly good. Then cold-blooded is going to be a lot weaker in this game simply because there's hardly anything to be cold-blooded from. Sensors and other items that reveal location. Really, like, point sensors and ink mines mark you. I granted you have thermal ink and hot down there, but we're going to explain why those two abilities are probably not too big of a deal for you, or at least not big enough of a deal to run cold-blooded. Opening Gambit and LDE, we will talk about why they're bad much later. And Tenacity, as far as I know, is mostly the same. Come back mostly the same. Ninja Squid. Hunt. The thing with Hunt that's different is that it's no longer a point sensor like Hunt. Instead, once you respawn, it reveals the position of the player who splatted you, like thermal ink. The other thing is that Hunt also applies to your teammates as well. So if you get splatted, your teammates can see where that person is via thermal ink once you respawn. Thermal ink, at first this sounds like a really great ability, and then you use it and you find that it's not really the most helpful much of the time. Especially considering that it literally doesn't work on blasters at this current moment, this current patch. Next is Respawn Punisher. This seems great at first, but don't run it unless you know what you're doing, because it does not work for the people you splat, it works for the people who splat you, which means you have to die and you have to incur that penalty before other players incur the penalty. Stealth Jump, key minus for distant players. If you are about the range of an L3 nozzle nose, the players can see your jump. Object Shredder, that's all non-player targets. I mean, obviously the show beacons here, but it's sprinklers, sponges, ink rails, ink armor, Rainmaker shield, a whole slew of things that are basically anything that you can hit that's affected by your ink, aside from the floor and the walls and actual players, is affected by Object Shredder. Drop roller, a forward or sideways roll, you do have to time it somewhat. For the most part, this isn't going to be too good. Either if you're like a short range shooter and you're jumping in, usually someone watching the jump is going to outspace you, If you're a long-range shooter and jumping in, then you're probably going to lose the fight due to whatever fire rate you have or something, and you are probably going to be horrendously out of position. So it's usually not the best ability. But those are all of the abilities that go through really quickly. The next thing that I want to talk about, or I want to get onto, starting to build some gear loadouts. So, one of the things you can do for gear loadouts is get a crap ton of cash. You're going to need it for later. Then you have the drink menu if you hit the X button. For the time being, these drinks seem somewhat of a scam. They will level up your gear faster, so there is that good thing. And you will get some higher chance of that gear, but it doesn't seem too big of a higher chance. So don't be banking on triples of ink recovery if you buy some ink charge melon. The next thing for gear, actually we'll get to merch last. Next thing is Grizzco, the wonderful place of work and torture. Grizzco, you can get all the bonuses. You can get tickets for drinks. Super bonuses might give you 32,000 gold for them. You can get chunks from it. So all in all, Grizzco is fairly good for getting stuff from. Also, the shirts and helmets and stuff from Grizzco, the Grizzco clothing. If you already have the clothing and it has no chunks, you'll swap it for 4,000 cash. If you do have chunks on that clothing, if it has some sub-abilities, you swap it for chunks instead of cash. So that's another way you can get the chunks. Final thing is Annie's shop on the mobile app. That shop will sell you clothing that that has a different main ability. So these fake contacts, they have special charge up. Maybe if they appear on Annie's shop, they might have run speed up or something like that. Whereas I bought these in the game, so they have special charge up. Now the next most important thing for building a gear loadout in Splatoon 2 so far is this guy. We'll actually get to Judd over there in a moment after this guy. As you know, you can order stuff off of people, you can increase slots and re-roll them, scrub slots, use ability chunks, and have Splatnet orders from Annie's shop. So let's go over increase slots / re-roll. Once you hit level 30, well, starting at once you get level 31 and over, you can talk to Judd. Yeah. Well, Big Judd. And Big Judd will give you one Sneeze Snail for every level that you get. And those Sneeze Snails are the only way you can increase slots or re-roll. Important note about re-rolling in this game compared to last is that re-rolling will give you ability chunks. The reason why they added this in was because ability chunks didn't exist in the last game. Wonderful. The main thing you're going to be doing is scrubbing slots and using ability chunks. So, scrubbing slots, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. You can buy drinks, you can get from Grizzco. Each gear brand has their own affinity for what slots they do or don't like. Info, please. I think Tentec gives you recovery up. Kraken gear will give you swim speed up. But then there is things like, this is just an example, this is not real. Maybe Kraken gear gives you a low chance for getting bomb defense. I'm just throwing that out there. So each brand has a preferred chunk that it'll give you and an unpreferred chunk that it might give you, or sub-ability, not chunk. But you'll be grinding that for chunks. So you would want to look that up, just Google it, and find what stuff has an affinity for what. Pretty simple. And then you can buy drinks to increase chances of the stuff that you want to get scrubbed. And eventually you can place these stuff on the gear. So here's the thing. Usability chunks. So if I select this cap, if I want to throw on an ink saver main, it says only 10 chunks required. Awesome. Let's say I want to throw on an ink saver. Let's actually skip over that. Let's say I want to skip over a special power up. That's still 10 chunks. Oh, let's keep on this. Let's say I want to throw on an ink saver sub. It requires 20 chunks. Now, the thing is that the chunks required goes off of how many sub-abilities that you already have. So if you want to add a second of whatever ability it is, it's not specifically Ink Saver Sub, in fact I'll show that. It's not specifically Ink Saver Sub, that requires 10. It's because I have another Ink Saver Sub on here, which is why it costs 20 chunks. Now, this right here is going to be the worst. To make this 3 swim speed chunks, it requires 30. So if you don't have any similar chunks, it costs 10. If you have one similar, it costs 20. If you have 2 similar sub-abilities, it costs 30. It does not matter what the main ability is for the gear that you have. That's the important thing to note. So when you are building a gear loadout, as you will notice, I have 3 ink recovery ups, 3 swim speeds, and 3 bomb defenses. I have put them on all separate gears. That way it only took me 30 chunks of each to make this, which is wonderful. Now this isn't what I would consider. So next we're going to go on to building kits, sort of some of the math behind it, how you go about it. This isn't exactly the best kit because it is essentially a 6 main kit. What I mean by that is I have a main of special up, a main of subsaver, ink main, and if you count, I have 3 subs of ink recovery, 3 subs of swim speed, and 3 subs of bomb defense. Now that is roughly equivalent to 1 main of ink recovery, 1 main of swim speed, and 1 main of bomb defense. So gear building in Splatoon 2 is, as far as we know, the same as gear building in Splatoon 1. Is that it's all on a point-based system. So the abilities that you have will give you a certain number of points towards that ability that you can think about. That a sub-ability gives you 3 points, and a main ability gives you 10 points. And that's sort of how we go about, think about it. If you look on graphs or charts, you will see everything listed out, usually by number of points. So you might see you might see an ink saver sub chart. You can test this out. Test. And they might have on the bottom axis the number of chunks, or sorry, not the number of chunks, the number of points, or 10, 20, 30. And then on the vertical axis, they will have the sub and how much ink it requires as a line graph going downward. So I have 10 points of ink saver sub, and so we can see on my tank that my disruptor is just above the 60% mark. Now one thing I want to, we can look at in the tank, she moves a bit less. And if you count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ticks on that tank. You can also see your sub there. Those ticks correspond to 10%, 20%, all the way up to 90%. Because you have a bit of the tank up there up top, and then down there as you go. So you can measure out your ink savers in that sense when you want to build your gear. But keep in mind the point system, because if you go ask other people about your build, it would either be how many main subs of something that you're running, or how many points that you're running. They might tell you need a certain number of points for such and such. So about building gear, the main thing that you would want to do is figure out sort of what feels right, quote unquote, for you. If a certain gear ability seems to be working for you, then use it and play with it a bit, or play with other gear abilities and see which one seems to work the best for you. That's mainly what it comes down to. If you're looking to build kits specifically for something, then of course you can ask other people. You can also watch top players, see what sort of gear they are running. Now, the next thing that we're going to start to get into is how much gear matters. And for that, we're going to need to talk about some Splatoon 1 gear. Mainly, we're going to start talking about damage up, along with a bit of quick respawn and a bit of stealth jump. So, damage up was a pretty strong ability in Splatoon 1. It's not that abilities are more or less important in Splatoon 2. We don't quite know yet. The thing is that for Splatoon 1, it was more so a matter of the weapon that you chose sort of had some dictatorship over what abilities you would run. If you were playing a sniper of some sort, you would almost always have some damage up, because Elirs first of all had burst bombs, so the damage would be affected by that. But if I get an almost fully charged shot on that guy, you'll notice it dealt 79 damage. Whereas if I had just a main of damage up, that dummy would be dead. Whereas I have to go full on to get the 180 damage. So that was one thing that a lot of weapons had to run damage. Damage was just useful for any weapons with burst bombs. Let's sort it by subs. Let's go everyone's favorite. Is that, oh, this dealt 35 damage and my slosh did that much damage. But if I had a main of damage up, that would have killed the guy. And so on and so forth. So from a bunch of the weapons, damage up was strong. The other thing that was strong was quick respawn, because if I could be in the match 15-20 seconds more than usual, that's a pretty good thing to run. It's mainly about Splat 1 gear. So far for Splatoon 2, we don't have anything that's too controlling. Ability is so good, like damage and quick respawn, that pretty much everyone would have to run it. The main thing that is kind of nice is bomb defense. The problem with this testing room is that there are no dummies that have any sort of defense on them. So it's kind of hard to test out bomb defense. But regardless, it's something that most people tend to run, or at least most players would say it's good to run, because there's a lot of places that you would get hit with bombs. It's also that tendon missiles get affected by bomb defense. Another strong ability is Object Shredder, simply because it does work on the Rainbow Shield, and if walls become into the meta, then Object Shredder will become stronger. That's about Splatoon 1 gear. Now, most people were wondering, how important really is the gear? Because some people just go ahead, it's like, well, I'm just going to choose the gear that I like the most, or that looks to me the best for Splatoon 1. That was one thing, and some people are like, well, no, I want my gear to be pures and stuff. And people were wondering, well, how much does it really matter? Now, the common argument is that skill is more important than gear. Is that if I am the worst, let's find a weapon that aims well. Okay. Okay. That if I am the worst sniper in the world and I miss all of the shots, having better gear isn't going to do anything for me. It's not going to help me hit my shots more. And so most people would say that the skill of the player is way more important than having the gear loadout. And to a certain extent that's true, is that if you're in C- rank, B rank, even up to S plus rank, chances are having a better gear loadout isn't going to improve you too much. It's going to improve you even less at the lower ranks. Whereas improving your skill is going to definitely change you from missing all of your shots to being able to hit dummies a lot more accurately. Now however, people will say that gear doesn't really matter or it only affects it a minimal amount. And when they say this, really they are wrong. That's a pretty harsh opinion for one of these videos. I usually don't have that, but usually they are wrong. You know, I don't like having a scope when I'm doing this sort of stuff. We're gonna put on a blaster for a moment. Say usually they are wrong. All right, I have auto bombs and whatever. Who cares? Really, is that if you run bad gear, that is probably going to affect you way more than running neutral gear or what would be considered good gear. Because running bad gear is simply not at all helpful for you. It's going to be a detriment for you. And you know what? Might as well talk about why last-ditch effort is bad. Last-ditch effort, why is it bad, or at least not used? It only works when either the objective is past a certain amount of points, or when the timer is past a certain time. Let's just imagine that it's last 30 seconds and 30 points. Now, here's the thing, is that if a team goes ahead and gets you down to 30 points at the start of the match, that's an ideal LDE case, in a way. That means your last-ditch effort is going to activate for the duration of that match. If it happens at the start, they get some weird Rainmaker push, and they push to 30. The problem is that if the team pushes it to 30 at the beginning of the match, they either got a stupid push, or they already outskill you enough where your ability simply isn't going to match her. So that's one problem for LDE, that it's usually not going to matter for most of the match, and when it does, it probably won't help you anyways. That you're already going to be down such a deficit, it's really not in your favor. And while it's a high risk, quote unquote high reward ability, you could be running other abilities that are low risk and medium reward, which are, they also work in many more situations, which is usually better. So the other thing about gear next is that the gear that you run sort of shapes the playstyle that you have. Is that the gear that I ran for Blaster was a Subsaver, a bunch of damage, and swim speed. This changed my playstyle, as Blaster in Splatoon 1 had a Splat Bomb, in which, for the gear load that I had with that much damage, is that I could do bomb combos with the CRB. I could throw a bomb, I could hit someone, and the bomb would kill them, whereas it might not otherwise if I didn't run the damage. I had the Subsaver because I could throw out an extra shot after throwing a bomb, or one extra blast, which usually came in handy for me. And finally, the swim speed, just to move around. Many times it would save me. And here's the thing about the gear does a minimal sort of whatever, is that running that amount of damage, you know, usually, like I I would shoot someone, I would shoot them again, and maybe it would be of two pretty far indirects. Whereas that if I ran damage, it would kill them. But if I didn't, because I did try out other gear stuff at the end of Platoon 1, that if I didn't run damage, it would not kill the person. And so that's one big difference, is that the difference between getting a kill and not getting a kill can be pretty important in a match. So gear might not be as minimal. The other thing is swim speed. Sometimes swim speed would help me get out of whales, ink strikes, etc., bombs. In which case I would otherwise die. That is a game changer. Swim speed to run the Rainmaker farther is a game changer. Having special charge up so you get your special more often is a game changer. You can't say that having 5 bubbles versus 8 bubbles isn't some sort of game changer. You can't say that it just minimally affects a match. It affects a match so much more than that. And that's the thing when people say, oh, gear only affects you a small amount. No, it affects you way much more if you think about the scenarios you could be in. It's very important. Going back to the playstyles, that with the amount of damage in Subsaver, is that my playstyle became much more bomb reliable. Now, if you ran special charge up on the CRB, which had Flat Bomb and Kraken, maybe you'll become more Kraken reliable. Basically, if you run special charge up, you will become a bit more special reliable, one could say. If you run swim speed or run speed, you become more mobility based in your playstyle. Run special, you become more sub based, which that was my playstyle, was a very sub based playstyle. And those combos. And so that's how gear really changes how you play. Now, the main thing is that for the most part, running good gear, like I said, won't affect you too much. It does affect specific matches very much, but overall, if you change out your gear loadout, you're not going to suddenly be winning tournaments or anything like that. That's the main point. The other thing is that most of the time when people do say, oh, gear is not really as important as skill, or, well, most everyone would say that, but gear does not affect a match, or only affects a match minimally, those are the people who are usually about mid-level and below who say that. Whereas people above mid-level would generally agree that gear does have a good enough impact on what you do to be used. The final point that I want to make is why gear might not be seen as too game-changing to someone in a lower rank, is that sometimes your gear build requires a certain amount of skill just in itself to really make good use out of the gear build. Basically, if I had the same CRB kit that I did when I first started playing CRB, it would more or less not work too much for me. This wouldn't be too much of a difference, because I wouldn't really know how to best space out splat bombs or space out my weapon to be of effective use. So what I mean by that is I wouldn't know where exactly I should throw my splat bomb to hit that dummy. I would have to look at it, aim, and throw it to be able to hit it when I'm a lower level. But if I just look and I want to hit that splat dummy, I know I have to do that. I've never done that before, but I just know that I have to do it just from how far away the dummy is. If I want to hit that guy going to the side, I want to throw it. Okay, I don't actually know how fast they go, so you know what? We're going to skip that example. But yeah, before I would have to look around and see that, whereas I could just pop my special over the wall while I'm swinging something. Of course, the other thing is that the sub will go that far. As you're adjusting your aim, you will notice that the sub goes in and out because of the small motion adjustments. So there's a bit of a difference between when you're just initially throwing the bomb and then me like trying to aim it. But if I was low skill level, then I would have to aim my bombs, or I would try to hit that guy and I would completely miss, and I'd get a different kill entirely. But when I know when I know how far my sub goes, when I know how far my main goes, I know how to hit that bomb up there. Even if I'm looking in like this direction, I know how to quickly toss the bomb over to be able to kill that guy. And so there does come skill in being able to use the gear that you have, because my bomb combo centered playstyle is pretty useless when I can't aim the bomb where I want it to go. But when I can aim the bomb where I want it to go, or I'm good enough where the bomb will go just where I want it. Like if I want a bomb to go on there, the bomb is going to go on there. It's not going to go anywhere else. 98% of the time, I'm going to make the bomb go there. It's going to be where I want it to be. And so that's sort of where being a high enough skill to use the gear that you have comes into play. So if you have a gear that doesn't work out initially, you might want to come back to it if everyone says it's a really good gear loadout for your weapon or something, because it might change how you do. So that's everything about gear, about figuring out how to do gear. It is a lot of experimenting, a lot of asking, and that's just what it comes to be for creating loadouts. But eventually you will be able to find something that you like, and you can also, if you're doing like scrims or whatever, or you're doing league matches, you can also see what gear other people are running if you're going against someone with the same weapon, or you can ask people about your gear loadout that you scrim with. So that's everything that I want to talk about for gear. Let me know if there's anything that I missed that's important to know, or any other questions, because gear is a bigger topic than people make it out to be, and it's really something that should be shown off. Thank you for watching.